The revelations surrounding the Thursday, January 29th episode of The Bold and the Beautiful unfold like a slow-burning emotional storm. One that does not rely on spectacle alone but instead digs deeply into the fragile inner lives of its characters. At the center of this unraveling stands Electra Forrester, a young woman attempting to convince herself that she has moved beyond the wounds of her past, even as every instinct in her body tells her otherwise. What should have been a carefree and healing trip to San Francisco with Steffi Forrester Finnegan becomes something far more complicated, a temporary escape that exposes how little distance truly exists between Electra and the fears she carries with her. The city, vibrant and full of possibility, offers her moments of laughter and connection, yet those moments are persistently shadowed by thoughts she cannot silence. Thoughts of Dylan, Will Spencer, and a situation that feels increasingly out of her control. Electra's anxiety does not emerge suddenly or without reason. It is not rooted in jealousy alone, nor in a lack of faith in the people she loves. Instead, it grows from a far more insidious place, one shaped by betrayal, manipulation, and emotional violation, though she insists, both to herself and to Steffi, that she trusts Dylan and Will. Her constant rumination tells a different story. Trust, after all, is not merely something that can be declared. It must be felt, and Electra's body reacts long before her mind can construct reassurances. The thought of Dylan spending extended time with Will at his home gnaws at her, becoming more pronounced with each passing hour she remains away. It is not the fact of their friendship that unsettles her, but the circumstances under which that closeness unfolds, particularly when boundaries appear blurred and her absence leaves space for uncertainty to flourish. Electra had tried to prevent this very situation. Before leaving town, she had explicitly cautioned Dylan against lingering at the main house, understanding intuitively that proximity could invite misunderstanding or temptation. It was a boundary meant to protect not only her relationship but her own sense of emotional safety. Yet plans have a way of unraveling when life intrudes. And in this case, Finn's decision to bring Hayes Finnegan along altered everything. What began as a simple visit became an overnight stay, and suddenly the dynamic shifted. Hayes fell asleep in one bedroom, innocent and unaware, while Dylan and Will were left alone together in the quiet of the house. For Electra, miles away and powerless to intervene, this scenario becomes a breeding ground for fear, not because she believes something definite will happen, but because she knows all too well how easily lines can be crossed in moments of vulnerability. The more Electra dwells on the situation, the heavier her anxiety becomes. She attempts to rationalize her thoughts, reminding herself of Will's integrity and Dylan's loyalty. Yet these reassurances feel fragile, easily fractured by memories she has never fully confronted. Steffi, perceptive as ever, notices the tension beneath Electra's words. Though Electra claims confidence in the people she loves, her restless energy betrays her. Steffi understands that true trust does not coexist with this level of distress. And as Electra continues to spiral, Steffi instinctively steps into a familiar role, not as a judge, but as a listener, a grounding presence, and, in many ways, a therapist. As Electra opens up, the past begins to seep into the present. She admits that her reactions are not solely about Dylan or Will, but about experiences that reshaped her understanding of safety and intimacy. The memory of Remy Price remains a defining trauma, one that lingers despite her efforts to bury it. Once considered a friend, Remy betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible, subjecting Electra to fake videos and relentless stalking that stripped her of autonomy and dignity. That violation left scars deeper than she has ever fully acknowledged, teaching her that familiarity can be weaponized and that danger does not always announce itself openly. Even now, those lessons echo in her mind, influencing how she interprets every ambiguous situation. The emotional fallout from the ordeal involving Luna Nozawa compounds these fears. Though Electra understands intellectually that Will bears no responsibility for what Luna did to him, the reality of another woman crossing boundaries with someone she cares about deeply reopens old wounds. It forces Electra to confront the uncomfortable truth that trauma does not always respond to logic. Knowing that Will was a victim does not erase the visceral discomfort she feels when imagining the violation, nor does it quiet the sense of helplessness that accompanies it. These layered experiences, Remy's betrayal and Luna's intrusion, form the lens through which Electra views the present, making it impossible for her to separate current events from past pain. Steffi listens without interruption, offering Electra the rare gift of being heard without judgment. She recognizes that Electra's fear is not irrational, but rather a natural response to unresolved trauma. In this space of vulnerability, Electra begins to articulate what she has long avoided admitting, that despite her best efforts, she is still haunted by what she has endured. Her anxiety is not a reflection of distrust in Dylan or Will, but of a deeper mistrust in the world itself. A fear that no matter how careful she is, harm can still find her. Steffi's role in this moment is not to provide solutions, but to help Electra understand herself, to validate the complexity of her emotions while gently questioning the narratives she has constructed to survive. While this intimate exchange unfolds in San Francisco, a very different kind of confrontation is brewing in Los Angeles. Ivy Forrester, sharp-eyed and unyielding, has witnessed something she cannot ignore. She saw Dylan sitting on Will's lap, their gazes locked in a moment that felt charged and unmistakably intimate. To Ivy, this was not an innocent lapse in judgment or a misunderstanding born of artistic expression. It was a clear violation of boundaries. Ivy's reaction is swift and fueled by a deep sense of responsibility, both to the Forrester name and to the unspoken rules that govern respect and propriety within their world. Ivy's anger is not merely personal, it is principled. She believes that certain lines exist for a reason, and once crossed, they cannot be easily erased. Dylan's behavior, in Ivy's view, represents a blatant disregard for those lines, particularly given the complicated emotional landscape surrounding Will and Electra. Ivy sees herself as a guardian of order, someone who must intervene when others are either unwilling or unable to do so. As such, she prepares to confront Dylan directly, determined to hold her accountable for what she perceives as reckless and inappropriate conduct. When Ivy finally confronts Dylan, the tension is immediate and unrelenting. Ivy does not soften her stance or entertain excuses. She reiterates her belief that Dylan's actions were entirely unacceptable, emphasizing that intent does not negate impact. Dylan attempts to explain, pointing to a misstep during a dance move and framing the moment as an accident rather than an expression of desire. Yet Ivy remains unmoved. To her, explanations ring hollow in the face of what she witnessed. The image of Dylan organizing a private ballet performance for Will only reinforces Ivy's conviction that this behavior reflects a deeper pattern of boundary crossing, one that cannot be dismissed as coincidental. Ivy's response escalates beyond reprimand. She issues an ultimatum, demanding that Dylan leave town by the end of the weekend. This decision is not made lightly, but Ivy believes it is necessary to restore balance and prevent further harm. Her actions reflect a broader theme that runs through this storyline: the tension between intention and consequence, and the reality that even unintentional actions can carry profound emotional weight. For Dylan, this moment marks a turning point, one that forces her to confront the impact of her choices and the precarious position she now occupies within the Forrester orbit. As these parallel narratives unfold, they converge around a shared question: how do people move forward when the past refuses to loosen its grip? Electra's internal struggle and Ivy's external enforcement of boundaries represent two sides of the same coin. Both are responses to fear, shaped by experiences that taught them the cost of complacency. Electra's fear is inward-facing, manifesting as anxiety and self-doubt, while Ivy's fear takes the form of control and decisive action. Together, they illustrate the varied ways individuals attempt to protect themselves and others from perceived threats. The episode does not offer easy resolutions. Instead, it lingers in the discomfort of uncertainty, inviting viewers to sit with the complexity of human emotion. Electra's journey towards self-awareness is ongoing, and while Steffi's support provides a foundation for healing, it cannot erase the scars of the past overnight. Similarly, Ivy's decision to push Dylan out of town may resolve the immediate tension, but it raises questions about whether exclusion truly addresses the underlying issues or merely displaces them. In the end, what makes this storyline resonate is its refusal to reduce characters to simple archetypes. No one is entirely right or wrong. Each is acting from a place shaped by experience, fear, and a desire for safety. Electra's anxiety, Dylan's defensiveness, Ivy's rigidity, and Steffi's compassion all coexist within a narrative that acknowledges the messiness of real emotional life. The looming fallout from Ivy's ultimatum promises significant consequences, not only for Dylan but for everyone connected to her. As the episode closes, viewers are left with a sense of impending change, aware that the choices made in moments of fear and vulnerability often echo far beyond their immediate context. Ultimately, this chapter of The Bold and the Beautiful serves as a poignant exploration of trust. How it is formed, fractured, and, in some cases, withheld as a means of self-preservation. It reminds us that healing is rarely linear and that the past, when unexamined, has a way of shaping the present in subtle yet powerful ways. Watching Electra confront her inner demons while Ivy enforces her version of justice invites reflection on how we ourselves navigate the fragile boundaries between caution and connection. And perhaps that is what makes this storyline so compelling. It does not merely tell a story, but holds up a mirror, asking us to consider how far we would go to protect ourselves. And at what cost. The episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, airing on Thursday, January 29, 2026, unfolds not as a spectacle driven by sudden shocks, but as a slow, suffocating build of emotional unease. One that reveals how fragile trust becomes when it is tested by proximity, memory, and unresolved fear. At the heart of this episode lies a triangular tension involving Ivy Forrester, Dylan, and Electra Forrester, with Steffi Forrester Finnegan acting as both observer and guide, drawing on her own complicated history to help another woman navigate an emotional minefield. What makes this episode particularly compelling is not the physical events themselves, but the psychological weight each character carries into every interaction, transforming ordinary moments into emotional flashpoints. Ivy Forrester enters this storyline already bristling with unease. Her discomfort does not originate from a single incident, but from an accumulating sense that something about Dylan's presence in Will Spencer's home is fundamentally wrong. Before she ever witnesses anything inappropriate, Ivy's instincts are already sounding alarms. She has heard enough to know that Dylan staying under the same roof as Will, who is not only taken, but emotionally vulnerable, is a situation ripe for misunderstanding, temptation, or worse. Ivy voices her concerns repeatedly, particularly to Electra, framing the arrangement as improper and ill-advised. Yet at this stage, her objections are theoretical, grounded in principle rather than proof. This distinction matters deeply to Ivy because she is not someone who reacts lightly. Her sense of propriety is rooted in a belief that boundaries exist to protect everyone involved, especially when emotions are already complicated. To her, the issue is not whether Dylan intends to cause harm, but whether the situation itself invites it. Ivy's frustration grows when she realizes that her warnings are not being fully absorbed, especially by Electra, who is physically away on business and emotionally overwhelmed by other concerns. When Ivy calls Electra to vent her mounting anxiety, she does so from a place of urgency rather than control. Yet the timing is wrong. Electra, preoccupied with work and already stretched thin, ends the call abruptly. From a rational standpoint, this decision makes sense. She cannot afford distraction, but emotionally, it leaves Ivy feeling dismissed and alone with her fears. This sense of isolation lingers as Ivy continues her work trip, carrying unresolved anger and worry with her. She has said her piece, yet nothing has changed. Dylan remains at Will's place, and Ivy's unease festers beneath the surface. When Ivy later arrives at the beach house, she is unprepared for what she sees. The moment unfolds quickly but leaves a lasting impression. Dylan seated on Will's lap, their bodies close, their attention seemingly locked on each other. Though Dylan turns away almost instantly, the image is already burned into Ivy's mind. It is no longer a hypothetical concern. It is a witnessed violation of the boundaries Ivy has been warning about all along. In that instant, Ivy's role shifts. She is no longer merely the voice of caution, she becomes the keeper of an uncomfortable truth. Electra, who is not present and has already made it clear she does not want to hear speculation, is unreachable in every sense that matters. Ivy understands that sharing this information immediately would only add to Electra's distress, especially from a distance. Yet doing nothing feels equally impossible. The weight of responsibility settles heavily on Ivy's shoulders, and she resolves to handle the situation herself. This decision is not driven by a desire for control, but by a belief that allowing the behavior to continue unchecked would be a greater betrayal. When Ivy confronts Dylan, the emotional temperature of the episode rises sharply. Ivy does not approach the situation with hesitation or politeness. She addresses it head-on, fueled by the clarity of what she has seen. Dylan, caught off guard, scrambles to explain. She insists that she was only dancing for Will, that he had encouraged her to demonstrate, and that the moment Ivy witnessed was the result of a stumble rather than intent. From Dylan's perspective, the situation has been misunderstood, reduced to an incriminating snapshot that fails to capture the full context. Her explanation is earnest, but it collides with Ivy's unwavering conviction that context does not excuse outcome. Ivy fixates on a single word, repeating it with increasing intensity: inappropriate. To her, the circumstances themselves are the problem. Living together, spending time alone, physical closeness under the guise of performance. All of it forms a pattern that cannot be dismissed as accidental. Ivy is not interested in parsing degrees of guilt, she is focused on preventing further damage. Even when Will's role is acknowledged, his insistence that Dylan dance for him, Ivy remains skeptical. She recognizes how easily responsibility can be diffused in such situations, leaving the most vulnerable person, Electra, to bear the emotional cost. As Ivy weighs whether to tell Electra what she has seen, she faces a dilemma with no clean resolution. Waiting until Electra returns to Los Angeles may spare her immediate distress. But it also risks allowing mistrust to deepen in silence. Telling her now, from afar, could destabilize her further. Ivy's internal conflict mirrors the broader themes of the episode. The tension between protection and honesty. Between acting decisively and acting compassionately. There is no option that feels entirely right, only choices that carry different kinds of pain. While Ivy wrestles with this confrontation on one side of the narrative, another emotional thread unfolds elsewhere. Quieter but no less significant. Electra Forrester, far removed from the beach house in physical terms, remains deeply connected to it emotionally. The episode reveals that she and Steffi Forrester Finnegan continue their ongoing conversation about Dylan and the unease surrounding her situation. Electra insists that she trusts both Dylan and Will. She reminds herself, and Steffi, that Will is committed to someone else, and that Dylan has always been a friend. Yet beneath these affirmations lies a persistent sense of dread that Electra cannot shake. Electra's fear does not arise from jealousy in the conventional sense. It is more primal than that, rooted in a gut instinct that something is not right when people she cares about are alone together. In a confined space, this intuition troubles her precisely because it contradicts her stated beliefs. She wants to be the kind of person who trusts without reservation, who does not project her anxieties onto others. But the feeling persists, growing stronger the more she tries to suppress it. The episode captures this internal struggle with remarkable sensitivity, portraying Electra not as paranoid, but as someone grappling with the aftereffects of emotional trauma. When Electra finally opens up to Steffi, the conversation takes on a confessional quality. Though the two women are not especially close, Steffi offers something Electra desperately needs: perspective without judgment. Steffi listens carefully, recognizing the familiar patterns of fear and self-doubt. From her own life, she understands how easily trust can erode when past experiences resurface. She knows what it is like to stand on both sides of betrayal. To be the one who crosses a line, and the one who is left questioning everything afterward. This dual perspective gives Steffi's guidance a quiet authority. Steffi does not dismiss Electra's concerns, nor does she validate them uncritically. Instead, she acknowledges that unwanted things sometimes happen even when intentions are pure. She reminds Electra that trust is not simply about believing in others, but also about honoring one's own instincts. At the same time, she gently challenges Electra to examine the source of her fear. Is Dylan truly a threat? Or is Electra's anxiety being amplified by unresolved feelings related to Luna Nozawa? The mention of Luna introduces another layer of complexity, one that Electra has not fully processed. The actions of Luna Nozawa left a deep imprint on Electra's emotional landscape. Though Will was not at fault, the experience shattered Electra's sense of security, teaching her that violation can occur without warning and without consent. That memory lingers, influencing how she interprets present circumstances. Steffi recognizes this connection and encourages Electra to consider whether her fear is about Dylan's behavior, or about the loss of control she felt during the Luna ordeal. This distinction is crucial because it shifts the focus from external threat to internal healing. Steffi's guidance does not come in the form of directives but reflections. She suggests that Dylan's living arrangement may be contributing unnecessarily to Electra's distress. Perhaps staying with Electra, rather than Will, would alleviate some of the tension. This suggestion is not framed as a condemnation of Dylan, but as a practical step toward restoring emotional balance. Steffi understands that trust is easier to sustain when situations do not actively undermine it. Throughout this conversation, Electra remains torn. She does not want to appear controlling or insecure, yet she cannot ignore the weight pressing on her chest. The episode allows her this complexity, resisting the urge to simplify her emotions into a single narrative. Electra is both trusting and afraid, rational and intuitive, confident and vulnerable. These contradictions do not cancel each other out. They coexist, shaping her responses in subtle ways. As the episode draws these threads together, it becomes clear that the true conflict is not merely between Ivy and Dylan, or between trust and suspicion. It is a broader examination of how people respond when boundaries blur and past wounds resurface. Ivy responds with confrontation, seeking to restore order through decisive action. Electra responds with introspection, trying to understand whether her fear is justified or inherited from trauma. Steffi responds with empathy, offering guidance shaped by hard-earned wisdom. The dramatic tension of this episode lies in the knowledge that each response, however well-intentioned, carries consequences. Ivy's confrontation may protect Electra, but it may also fracture relationships irreparably. Electra's restraint may preserve harmony, but at the cost of her own peace of mind. Steffi's counsel may guide, but it cannot shield others from making their own painful choices. This interplay of motives and outcomes gives the episode its emotional resonance, inviting viewers to consider how they themselves navigate trust, fear, and responsibility. In the end, the January 29, 2026 episode of The Bold and the Beautiful does not offer easy answers. Instead, it presents a landscape of emotional ambiguity, where every character is acting from a place shaped by experience and fear. It reminds us that trust is not a static state, but a fragile process that must be nurtured and protected. And it underscores a sobering truth. Sometimes, the most damaging conflicts arise not from malice, but from moments when good intentions collide with unresolved pain.